Okay. All right. Look at that. We got magic. Google's doing a good job. But no, man, it's good to see you. That conversation that we had at lunch, I was, talking with my head of product, Sean, and we were like, listen, as we roll this thing out and we start slowly and we start growing, we were talking about all the technicalities of, direct marketing and internal sales. And then I just realized during this whole process, I've had so many wonderful conversations
Yeah.
with really, really smart, wonderful people, and they all get lost in the ether.
Yeah.
And a lot of it's because we formalize it too much. And those are the conversations that I hate listening to and I never go back to, are the like ultra formal, structured ones. It's like it makes me feel like I'm in class
Yeah.
versus these like wonderful, call them fireside chats like
Yeah.
the three of us had, you, me, and Ian, just over lunch talking about random stuff and microservice architecture.
Yeah, for sure.
And yeah, so anyways, man, you
All
were
over a $3 side salad.
exactly, and way too many French fries that I ate. I ate so many French fries. But man, dude, I mean, yeah. To your original question though, life is good.
Yeah.
Down here in California, I'm actually flying up to Portland tomorrow. So if you guys are around, let's try to link up.
Yeah, for sure.
Um, I'm just popping up, having a couple of meetings, and then watching some football with friends on Saturday. So
Yeah, no, man, college football's in the full swing of it, and it's nice. And yeah, it was funny when you said casual. Um, I'm getting here, and I've my office, right? Like, am I a therapist? It kind of looks like I might be, but the couch back there, I got some nice chairs over here, right? So it's like you're doing all this stuff, then I'm like, oh, it's casual. That's right. And I'm like, what better way to say casual than like I look down and I've got a coffee stain right here, and then my kid is sick, so I've got snot stains over here. So it's just like, yeah, this is life. Let's do it. Let's go.
oh, dude, I tried it out. The first one that I did was with my buddy Hui, and he's got his kids coming in and out, and I know and love them, and it's
Yeah.
I don't know, man. It's the reality of this, and I'm kind of over the whole performative art of, I don't know, call it the LinkedIn culture of where everything's awesome all the time, and we all exist in this way. And it's like, hey, let's open it up and have a real conversation.
Yeah, it's funny that you bring that up, and I just want to. There's something that came up, and I'm not sure if you followed like the whole complex thing and know Rich Antonello, the founder. He posted something to LinkedIn. I think it was last week, that was outstanding, and I want to make sure I don't butcher this quote.
Okay.
I'm so sorry, if you can just bear with me 1 second.
Dude, all good. Take your time.
Because it hits exactly what you just said. Yeah.
No, I love it. Find it, man. I'm all about those pull quotes.
Okay.
I use them as inspiration all the time, just to trigger new thoughts. But shoot.
Big fact, he says, that doesn't get talked about enough. Consistently amazed at the lack of patience, in parentheses, long vision, of both employees and investors / board members. Entrepreneurs get beat up from all sides. It is truly lonely and tests your fortitude. Of course, when and if there's a successful exit, all of that is completely forgotten and rewritten as if everyone was always confident and it was smooth sailing.
Will you forward that to me?
Yeah, and that's the performative piece, right? It's like, on the exit, you get the good news, whatever. It's like, oh man, they built this wonderful company and it was great. And it's like, it's tough, man. It's tough. It's tough.
Dude.
There's a reason why like the attrition rate for startups is so high.
Yeah, no, I mean, it touches on so many true points, right? Because I mean, one, at some point we're going to refocus this on you, because I want to hear more about your path. But on the entrepreneurial side, man, you're absolutely right. I popped onto LinkedIn and saw this post from this super smart, super nice guy for all intents and purposes. But I've seen like two posts that are contradictory in the last week from this person, right? One was this morning's was talking about the what was it? It was like the persistence and the long-term thinking, right, that entrepreneurs need to have is like three big mistakes. They're short-term ROI and getting bad money in and all these things, right, coming from an investor. And then like a week before, it's like you need to prioritize ROI and getting revenue in as soon as possible. Oh, the other one was like enterprise sales. It's like you're not ready for that. But then like you have the conversations internally and they're like, yeah, PLG bottom up motions don't work. You need to go straight to enterprise.
Right.
And you're like, I get it. You need to spit like little catchphrases into LinkedIn for the bots to get you, but like you're giving so much conflicting advice to entrepreneurs. And I think it largely ignores the reality, right? Which is you have broad frameworks that you can kind of go by, but it's messy and it never works out the same way that it did twice. And frankly, I think that's the kind of disillusionment that a lot of entrepreneurs face, is because they go into this with a great idea or very smart or just some pride that, that they want to see through.
Right.
And then they run into their first barrier and they're told 1,000 different things from 1,000 different angles. Mm-hmm. And it's tough, man. It really is. But I think that's also, back to it, it's the importance of advisors, right? It's the importance of surrounding yourself with good people that are going through it, have been through it, and can like help you guide through and sort through the bullshit, to be real. So
yeah, absolutely, man. You have to be your own lens, and that's feedback. I think at any stage of your career, or whether or not you're an individual contributor, a middle manager, a senior leader, executive, or entrepreneur founder, it's like you have to be your own filter for that feedback. Yeah. Because it's there's blind spots everywhere, and that's it's why you have the advisors, so you can understand what your blind spots might be, and then understanding that they also have blind spots. That's you're more likely to get through. If you're lost in the forest and you got three people, like I think you're with a broken compass, you're more likely to survive and get through the other side. If everyone kind of knows, like, hey, I'm good at this, I'm good at this, I'm good at this, like instead of just like listening to one person. I'm pretty sure that's what happened at the Donner Party, is they listen to one person. No, I'm not joking. I think it was one guy, and he was like, no, I'm not going to take anyone else's advice. We're going to do this. And we all know how that story ends. And we full cannibalization.
What was the name of the book? There was a great book about the Donner Party. It was like Under Indifferent Stars, or like the indifference of the stars above. It's such a beautiful title. I was actually thinking about that the other day, funny enough, on the Donner Party in that book, because of the beauty of that title, of just like, when you think about it, it's such an ominous foretelling of like fate, right? It's just like, the stars above, all these grand things we dream of, they're indifferent to your wants, your needs, or anything, and anything can happen. But the thing the cliche and adage that I've been thinking about today was even a broken clock is wrong twice a day. And I was thinking about that because of the advice thing on LinkedIn and everything that I'm seeing, and I'm like, dude, I can't. Okay, honest question. Yeah. Because you've dealt with the technology world and you know this. Of like, what percentage of advice from investors, from like venture capital, from that world, is reverse engineered from investing in like one or two successful enterprises and being wrong like 90% of the time, but then just reverse engineering from that one? It's like the broken clock analogy. Like, are you that good? Are you beating the odds, or are you got lucky twice?
Right. Look at investment. Like, what percentage of actively managed funds beat the S&P 500 and beat it consistently over time? It doesn't. That's why what's that? Ben Graham, Intelligent Investor, Warren Buffett's his mentor. It's like, look, unless you know and you know how to dig into this analysis, you are best served just to put your money into an all stock index fund or an index fund S&P 500 and just let that baby ride over time. There, the actively managed funds trying to time the market, all that stuff. It's a pipe dream. It's a pipe dream. I think we've seen that, right, with the investing cycle, both on the VC world as well as in the greater financial world, right? Like people were hot, man. Kathy Woods from ARK Invest, from ARK Innovation, she was super hot for a while, and then boom, tech stocks fall and massive outflows. I think she's still doing pretty good, and I am a Kathy, with the saying that in Kathy we trust. I'm still a Kathy Wood fan, but it's all over the place, man. Like it is trying to time it, trying to be right all the time, trying to beat the market. It is a pipe dream.
Yeah, man. I have a buddy who's just a very smart, financially intelligent human, and he does it as a profession. He's been in IB, he's been in M&A, he's in strategy now at a big public company. But I'll ping things off of him because it's what he does every day, and he has the same advice, and he does the same thing. It's like, it's like 70% in index funds, right? And it's like, and you blend, the bond and the equity markets, and that's going to be your best bet. Like you don't do it. Now, it's kind of curious why, our senators and Congress people seem to beat the market every time. There's a mystery for you. But
there should be an index fund for them. Like it should take all their stock picks because they're required to disclose it, and that should be the index fund. I think. Okay, so this is how it's going to work. What you guys are doing, you're going to stop that, and we're going to create an index fund based on investments of Congress people.
I'm in, man. There actually is a trading platform out there. I'll send it to you. That manages and does the trade, but it's not a fund. It's like a watch, it's like a mini Bloomberg terminal that just does the trades, and they put a paywall up and they're trying for subscriptions. But I think we do a fund, man. I think we all stop what we do. We start a hedge fund just based on indexing those.
I'm going to go tell Ian.
Dude, yeah, tell Ian, tell Dan, tell the rounds is like, hey, this is what, if every day fails, we're starting this. we're calling it the Congressional Fund.
There it is.
It's very prestigious. But yeah, man. So, okay, we got to talk briefly, but I wanna know more about you. I want to know more about your path to becoming COO at DTMG.
Yeah.
And like, you're one of those rare people where when I first met you, I was like, all right, who's this guy? Who's Ian bringing? Is it just another guy? No, I'm kidding. But seriously, it was like, we sat down and it was like, cool, COO. COOs are very stereotypically like, you guys are very regimented. You get things back on track. Maybe you had a military parent or something. But you're also deeply technically savvy. So you've had, like, I want to hear it. What's the story, man? Start from the beginning.
Start from the beginning. It started out in a snack bar at a little league. That was my first gig. $40 under the table, making corn dogs, hot dogs, selling Big League Chew, sunflower seeds, everything, And before you know it, me and my buddy from high school, we ran this snack bar. And we're like, oh, we're buying this stuff from Costco, but why don't we go try and direct? Because we're in Southern California, so a bunch of those brands there, and see if we can get a lower price or get the wholesale price, or what can we do? So then we started looking at margins and started tinkering in the snack bar. And before you know it, like our margins were way up, and we were pulling more money, and we were paying ourselves more. I'm not joking, man. That's literally how my working experience started. Heading,
how old are you? Because I'm picturing like a 5-year-old looking at margins.
oh, I wish. As a 5-year-old, I was still shaking my grandmother down for dollar bills.
Nice. Me too.
For our business.
Yeah.
We were 16. Yeah, 16. Yeah, 16.
Dude, I love it. And already thinking about increasing those margins. Okay, so you built up the snack bar margins.
Yeah, we build up the snack bar margins, right? We get that thing humming along. We have an exit, and by exit I mean we graduated high school and went to college. So that was my first one. But no, look, I got in, did college. I was an athlete, played water polo and swimming, did both sports Division I. And that's really what taught me competitive drive, resiliency, and swimming. And I'd probably say track and field as well, right? They're unique sports in the sense, and there might be other sports out there. I don't mean to just zero in on those two, but those are the two I can think of, where you will train for. There's really 2 big meets a year. So there's spring nationals and summer nationals, and then every 4 years you have Olympic trials. So you will train for 6 months, 7 months, 8 months. If you're on Olympic cycle, you'll train for 4 years, right? For a race that lasts anywhere between 19 seconds for a 50 freestyler, or for a mile. Katie Ledecky's getting down there for the women close to 15 minutes for a mile, which is amazing. And the men, are sub 15 minutes. But that's a lot of training that you do. 12 workouts a week, et cetera. So it really kind of ingrained in me this whole delayed gratification piece, and understanding that there's going to be setbacks, everything. You just have to keep pushing on because it has to be done. And I think that's something for startup founders that you do get beat up, right? And entrepreneurs, and you have to be able to stick in there and know that it has to be done. So grind it out.
Dude, delayed gratification is a big one. It's a very underappreciated lesson to be taught in just what that long game is. I mean, as a founder, right, especially as a funded founder, you have to do delayed gratification, because one of the kind of covenants that you make with investors is, I'm not doing this for a big salary, right? This is for equity. And and it's funny, right? Because it's one of those things where it's one of those soft negotiations in the back of it. What are you spending on yourself? And I was like, well, I don't, I want to still be able to live, but I don't want to blow my resources other places. Exactly. And it's kind of a joke. It's a running joke when you see inexperienced entrepreneurs, because they've never seen $1 million or $2 million in a coffer before, and then they see it and they're like, oh great, I'll spend $500,000 on me. They're like, whoa, no. you're gonna make the least in the company, but you have the most equity, and that's the trade-off, because if this thing sells, then you're good, or goes IPO. But that delayed gratification, when did you obviously with water polo, which, man, just to jump around here, that is an intense sport. That is it. I mean, if you want to talk about cardio mixed with a different kind of physicality, because it gets physical.
Yeah. Oh yeah. It's grappling, jiu-jitsu, mixed with cardio. You get everything. You get everything, and then you get the anaerobic work as well, because you got to sprint, and you got to be able to sprint, and you got to be able to take a punch.
And scratches too. I've seen people get out of the pool and they're just scratched up.
Yeah, a lot of it. The Olympic cams are pretty good when they show you what's going on underwater. And it is different as well when you're playing Division I water polo, because I think that's one of your first exposures to the international game and how different the international game is, because you do have quite a few European players coming over, Brazilian players as well, coming up from South America and playing for universities. So I will remember. I'll never forget. We were playing against. I went to Fordham, played water polo there. Go Rams! And we played against Queens College. In Queens College, they had a 26-year-old freshman. Like full beard, dude, and like and I never will forget. I was like, that is a man. Team, you know what I mean? Like that is what that's the man strength. And it was like, wow, all right. And I got thrown around like a rag doll. May or may not have broke my nose that match. So it is, yeah. But
dude, you're talking to the son who followed in the same path of a late bloomer, of where like my dad, I think, was the shortest of male and females in his high school class until his senior year.
Yeah.
And I was a little bit of a late bloomer too. And it was like, he was like 5'6", right?
Yeah.
And it was like, and now he's 6'1", and same thing here. It like took me a while. So I remember just even in my small little school being like the kids that had a beard at like freshman year, and I was like, wow, that must be great. Now I'm like too lazy to shave it. It's the only reason I still have one. But it's real, man. And Fordham's a good program.
It is, yeah. The water polo program has built up quite a bit. Super proud of the Rams. My brother played there as well. So we've got a legacy, and we continue to track the program, and happy to see it continuing to thrive. Yeah, but hey, I you asked me for intros, so I want to make sure we land this plane. Professionally, I jumped into HR, and I worked retail. Started out my career started out in hospitality at Wyndham Worldwide. Worked at a resort in Vegas because that was a brilliant idea to live in Las Vegas right after you graduate college. Had some fun, but hey, learned a lot of lessons, and I had a great mentor as a boss that passed away last year. He was a retired lieutenant colonel in the Air Force, and he is the man that like taught me about routines, how to have a strong routine, sticking to that routine no matter what's going on, and like asking questions, collecting data and information, and letting that tell the story. Right.
Cool. So I was right about the military influence.
Yeah, for sure. Definitely. Retired Lieutenant Colonel Don Winston. Yeah, he's like, there's so many stories that he told me all the way from back in Vietnam. He was a pilot during Rolling Thunder, which was like the big operation that we had, because we were fighting the war overseas, but we were also fighting the public perception war at home. And for some reason, we thought that creating a high body count would prove that we were winning. So that's the Operation Rolling Thunder. We have a common
that worked out well.
Always, this happened in our first conversation. Like we got into some deep historical stuff as well. Because didn't we go military history on that conversation?
I think we did, man. It's fun. And like, listen, it's relevant though. Like, I think, well, one is, from an operational perspective, right? We actually, we just submitted, we've been kind of approved as a program, but we just submitted to partner up with a transitionary program with the military, with the Department of Defense. Oh, wow. And it stems from like, I have friends that are in that world. One is one of my best friends. And I mean, you're talking about insanely intelligent, operationally excellent people that don't have a strong transition path into the private sector, right? And my best buddy is retiring at the end of this year, right? And he's just a little bit older than me. It makes me feel a little depressed. I'm not retiring, but he's going to potentially come and intern for us, right? And then potentially work with us because there's a lot of similarities in specifically in the program that we're doing because it's affiliated with some of the JSOC world. Okay. And so they're like, I mean, that's a world that's like, very intense, very, it develops people that need to shift from thing to thing but be operationally excellent. And in the private sector, that's obviously very hard to find in the civilian world. And with that is like startup culture is actually very relevant, right? Because you have to solve problems every day, every week, every quarter. Goalposts move. There's high intense, high stress scenarios. Now, not the same thing at all, right? But it mimics some of the things. And so we're doing that. And one of the things that I've always leaned into that as well is like a deep love and respect for the power of behavior, right? And routine. And I think the military is a great representation of how it drills into just core fundamentals of your day and the value that can bring. And especially for entrepreneurs, for companies, the myth that one of the other myths that we're sold is this, it's kind of the Rain Man myth, is that you just have this one deeply intelligent person, and if they have the right idea at the right time, it just takes off. And it's like, no, like you can have a great idea or a mediocre idea, but a great idea it doesn't ensure excellence, right? A good idea well executed will beat a great idea poorly executed any day. Right. And operational effectiveness is a tricky thing in a startup because, like, one, you don't have operations in that deeper sense. It's more just like persistency and consistency of behavior. Like, do you get up? Do you go through the actions? Do you continue to go, and do you listen to the input to potentially pivot or work around or, get creative, whatever it is? And then you start scaling the operations, right? But I don't know. I'm curious, man, because you're like, okay, like we're going to get back to at some point your transition from from the hotel business. But, but like, I mean, very relevant. Like I don't know how you would describe your position right now in DT, but you're kind of being brought on to right the ship a little bit, right?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, media and publishing in general is it's tough out there right now. And you need to look no further than, trade magazines or just the general business magazines, Forbes, Wall Street Journal. There's layoffs in tech. And look, like we weren't immune or are not immune to the challenges there. But again, it's about grinding it out, sticking to the basics, and simplifying and keeping things simple. We're really fortunate to have two excellent board members. And last year, because it's been a transition for me to go into this operations role, and it started about a year ago. And I remember meeting with one of our board members, and he just said, two things. He says, one, remember, business is easy. Make more than you spend.
I love that guy or lady, whoever it is.
And then he said, and we had a good laugh about that. And he said, no, I'm serious. There is going to be temptation to overcomplicate it. And the best operators that I've seen and I've worked with, and he's speaking, are the ones that are able to keep it simple. I think around the same time, someone introduced us to this concept. I don't know if you're familiar, fancy play syndrome. It's a poker term.
No, but I want to know it.
Yeah. So it's this syndrome where like you have, a really great poker player and they're at the table with, I think the term for a, kind of like a noob that has no idea is a fish. Okay. And so they're at the table with a fish, and like the fish is just like, has no idea of strategy, has no idea of like odds, playing the odds. And they're just out there just playing, right? Going on gut. And you have this other poker player that's just trying to, work the odds, work the analytics, and be really intricate with their plays. And they end up losing to the fish, right? And they're like, I just don't know how are you doing it? Like, how are you beating me? And it's because they're overcomplicating it, right? They're overcomplicating it. They're putting in all of these unnecessary solutions to sometimes for problems that do not exist. So that's ultimately what we have been working on for the past year, is simplifying the business. And it's been rather complicated to simplify the business, but we're getting there, and we're getting to something that's more simple, because simple is repeatable and scalable. You can really dig in there. So that's what my transition's been like over the past 12 months. And like I said, just really fortunate not only to have two really great board members that are active and always willing to have an open ear, and definitely challenge you as well. But then also Dan and Ian have been absolutely awesome in my transition.
Yeah, man, they're great. It's so funny on the what was it called? The fancy play
syndrome.
Fancy play syndrome. I've been getting into golf more. I think I talked to you about that.
Oh yeah.
And so my social feeds are entirely like making fun of venture capital agencies and consultancies, like literally just farcical pages that are like talking about BS, which is the personality we're going to bring out in every day, and golf, and just like constant fixes that for things that aren't even broken, because I haven't had a chance to break them yet. And but the favorite was of the last couple of days was some video, of course, of Tiger Woods, and he's giving an instruction. And he talks about advice his dad gave him called the KISS example. Keep it stupid simple.
Yeah.
And he's like, you're not that good yet. You might not ever make it to be that good. So just keep it simple. Know what you have. And actually, man, to this very thing that we're doing, this working session, it was the same thing. It's like I signed up. I changed this link beforehand. I don't know if you saw, because I was signing up and I was like, what's the best link for, vlogging and blogging, and what can do it? And I was like, wait, I don't really have an audience, right? And we don't have this yet. And we're looking at overcomplicating this whole thing with title boards and this, that. And I was like, no, just like send out the link, record it, put it into the ether, right? And we'll be smart about it. We'll do the little things. But the biggest thing is engage with really smart people that you love talking to. Have a good time about it and make it interesting, right? And is like at the end of the day for us is like the stupid simple part is we get advice from great people, right? That we would want to talk to anyways, like yourself, right? And then we also get to put that out and provide something that if people really want to look and talk and engage in this whole thing, they get to. And meanwhile, we get to have a working session that we would have anyways. Right. And it's like, why not do this in a more casual way? And it just keeps, I think what you're talking about of just like keeping it simple just keeps resonating with us in our operations right now. Like Sean and I were talking about like emails in our new cohort that we're inviting in, right? And we're just inviting people in, and we have this whole fancy over drawn out process where we're like, nah, invite them in, spend a half an hour. If it goes over, let it go over, right? Build in a buffer, expose them, capture everything, retain the information so that we're doing this. And then we were like throwing fun emails out, right? And we were talking about strategy and how to write it and do this. And we were like, no, just let it be. Just let it be. Like,
yeah. I mean, that's the whole like lean startup concept, right? Is like just get something in front of them, watch the way people use it, and then iterate from there.
Yeah. No, and it's so nice too, because I think it relieves, operating that way relieves so much of the pressure from both like both up and down the hierarchy, right? Because as a boss is like, when you start looking at the performance, it's like, I don't need to know about all the intricate little details and all of this. It's like, just keep it simple. What did you get done? What did you move this week? Right? Did you make more than you spent? Right? Yep. And vice versa, when you're lower on the poll, it's the same way. It's like, do I have a very clear, simple, right, like destination? And it's like, and if you do, then you get to, right? Then you just know exactly what you're going after. But yeah. So wait, go ahead.
I was gonna say, like, I've kind of given a little bit, and I still haven't landed the plane. By the way,
Okay,
we're
let's
still,
land it, man.
so I'm just gonna get through it real quick. So went from from hospitality, started working retail at Target. Did that. They have an amazing leadership training program at Target. Like anyone that may be watching this, if you're starting out your career, like do not look past retail and look past working for Target Corporation, because it was like, man, they give you the blueprint, and it's an easy to follow process. They have leadership expectations. They help you with self-awareness and identifying, like, hey, these are my leadership strengths. This is my developmental opportunity. They don't call it a weakness. They call it an opportunity, which is just that little like flip of a word, right? So it was a really cool experience. Then started consulting for a small boutique HR consulting firm here in Portland. That's how I got introduced to Discogs. Started working at Discogs, worked there for 5 years. And that's where I made the transition from HR over to operations. We did some really cool things there. Awesome team at Discogs. I think, Kevin, who's the founder and still there, has just done an awesome job in talk about like a true mission led organization. I just can't say enough good things about Kevin and the team there. So went from Discogs and came over to DT, and it's been a ride, man. I got to meet Ian and Dan it was a girls' soccer game. It was Ian's daughter's soccer game, and I had a buddy who had a daughter that was playing on the same team, and we met on the sidelines. And then, like, hey, it'd be cool if we could work together sometime. And then, like, fast forward like a year later, that opportunity came up, and it was like, yeah, man, I remember you from the soccer game. Let's do it.
Isn't that the best? Yeah. I've had so many fortuitous like relationships and things happen from those wonderful serendipitous happy accidents, whatever you call it. Of like, I remember I met this amazing guy, Mark, and he has like a recycling plant and a private equity company and all this, and he's just so accomplished, and he's just under like what do you call it, when just under the radar guy. Mm-hmm. And the whole reason it happened was I was in Camp Sherman, like at the beginning, in the beginning of the pandemic, like the very beginning. It was like the summer, so it was like just starting to maybe shut down.
Right.
And my whole family, we went there as kids to this place called the Lake Creek Lodge. If you're familiar with, like,
I'm familiar with Camp Sherman.
Yeah. Okay, so Lake Creek Lodge used to have an actual lake. They filled it in, like the 60s song, they paved paradise and they put in a dirt patch. But regardless, we were there, old cabins, very fun, very it's a great place if you get the chance. And I was like waiting for my sister to arrive or something like that. And I was like, oh, there's a little Mexican restaurant now down by the Metolius, by the river. Mm-hmm. And so I just hyped on my bike and decided to ride down there like I was a kid again and pick up food for, the few of us. And I sat down and had a margarita. Mm-hmm. And I'm sitting there talking about, like just sitting there having a margarita next to the Metolius River in Camp Sherman, just random. And then I just started talking to this couple that was sitting there having margaritas, and they're the only other ones there. And we were talking about development. And then it turned into this consulting project that went on for about a year and a half. That was great because he was an investor, and they brought us on to consult and help with these things. And I felt bad because at the end of the consulting gig, my recommendation was not to invest. But well, that wasn't my recommendation. My recommendation was the numbers that we produced in the analysis, and there was just a clear it was going to take a lot to make more money than they spent.
Sure.
To keep it simple, right? Back to your terms. Right. But it all happened from that. And I can't tell you how many relationships have just come from engaging in conversation and keeping it going. And, kind of to land your plane, right? Of, you end up at DT and you have great people and you have great advisors, having these conversations. Like we're raising our round right now. And so we're negotiating with leads and we're landing, we're going through these different mechanisms. And I'm lucky enough that one of our advisors, that was a friend of a friend, has been a CEO and has private equity firm himself. And I was like, hey, what's the best way to do this without playing this silly, crazy game that seems to be experiencing some turmoil right now in the venture capital world? And he's like, oh, here's how you structure this round, and here's how it plays out, and here's some contracts, just use ours, and then check with your attorney and make sure it all makes sense.
Right.
I'm like, whoa, all right. So this guy who's like smarter than smart, very matter of fact, right, just lays out a clear structure for how to deploy this round. And it's like, I can't Google that. I can't get that from anywhere else, because if I go to Google, if I go to LinkedIn, if I go to any of these resources, they funnel me to what the most talked about version is, not the most effective version. And even when you get into like, is it effective? It pipes you into the same popularity game, right? And it's very difficult to do that. I'm curious, man, like in turning in helping DT get through this kind of tumultuous time, like in keeping things simple, like how are you pushing, like, because you have an HR background, which is amazing, right, by the way, because you know how to handle people too. How would you like how are you balancing the need for, keeping it simple but making hard decisions?
Oh man.
I led you into that bear trap, didn't I?
Yeah, for sure. Keeping it simple and making hard decisions. It's bringing back to cliches like how do you eat the elephant one bite at a time.
Yeah.
It's looking at like what's in front of me, what is important at the end of the day, and keeping the best interests of DT always in the forefront, right? It was late night Netflixing, and ran into this thing that they had on coaches, right? And the first episode is on Doc Rivers, and he opens up by saying this, and I used this quote yesterday in a difficult conversation, where it was he says, look, the first thing I say when I sit down with a team at the beginning of the season is, hi, my name is Doc Rivers. I am a human and I will make mistakes, but ultimately I'm here to do what's best for the team. And that may not be what's best for you, and that may not be what's best for me. But if it's what's best for the team, then it's good. And being willing to have a difficult conversation and actually say that, it almost like breaks and relieves the pressure, right? Because then it puts everyone on equal footing. That, look, we're two humans here. I am in a decision-making authority. I will make mistakes. I will listen to your input. But at the end of the day, it is on me. Like, it is my responsibility. Not only like my responsibility in the sense of being a leader, but also like I have a fiduciary responsibility as well, to do what's best for the organization. And yeah, like,
that's great, man.
Sometimes it's not even what's good for yourself, but like, like you were saying, as entrepreneurs, you see those coffers, you see those $2 million in there, like, yeah, it's a lot of money, but leaders eat last, man. You're not in it for the short term. You're not in it for that 2 million that's in the coffers. You're in it for hopefully a exit put you in the trace comas.
Yeah, that'd be nice, man.
Trace comas club.
The Three Commas Club. That's funny, is actually one of Hallie, who's one of the co-founders at Everyday. I told her that. I was like, 3 commas, that's the next stop. That's where you want to be, right? And it was like, this is the sacrifice right now. But dude, I have to talk about the elephant real quick.
Yeah.
There's another great elephant metaphor
Yes.
on how to eat an elephant is great. I deal with my mind always goes to perception. I talked about this last time of, you know, I wrote this whole treatise on how to define and measure brand at my last company because it was always very esoteric and I would get confused and I would battle it. That same very smart financial friend actually did a great oversimplified job of explaining it one time. And he was like, brand is the delta between cost of goods and your gross revenue.
Right.
And he's like, that's the power of it. Is like that's not an operational benefit. Anything above the cost of goods is effectively brand, right? Cool. Now there's a lot goes into it, and I built out this kind of theory from all my reading and everything over time. But one of them was the signals, the perspective, and value. I called it SPV, which is I have terrible analogies that I made. That's it never caught on, but it was signals, perspective, and value. And the idea was, right, that everything that you take in and that you put out is a signal, right? And that could be the color of your shirt, a logo, you know, media, ads, whatever it is. And that goes two ways. And then there's perspective. And every individual or group of individuals has a perspective or a shared perspective that they are then weighing those signals through. And then there is value, and the value is what those individuals attribute through their perspective to those signals, right? And so you basically can break down any communication, any outward presentation into a signal, right? Like your gait of your walk, the clothes that you wear, your haircut, these are all signals. Companies have the same thing. And then your audience, right, has perspective, and you need to, yes, there's individual perspective, but then there's tribal, communal, et cetera, and they expand out. But then the values that you put on them, and then perspective can be broken down, right? So I'm going on a diatribe. I'm gonna clean it up here in a second. But perspective is, you know, there's logical, there's semantic, there's psychoanalytical, right? And all of these various perspectives that then contribute to it. Back to the metaphor on the elephant, right? There's this great one that I would always kind of use in these conversations that came up. One, I always use my brother-in-law as an unfair example of this because we were in Utah one time and it was getting close to Christmas and his daughter wanted AirPods. And he's a frugal guy. You know, he's a build it yourself. He's so handy, so good at that. He's like, why would I spend, you know, $200 when I could spend 20 on this Amazon pair that's way better? Right. He's like, and I was like, oh, brand, man. He's like, I don't understand brand. What is brand and this? And he starts going. I was like, well, hold on a second. You realize that you're a brand yourself. Like you're a brand demographic and you're the utilitarian guy, right? That doesn't care about that, but you're a category yourself. And it got me into the elephant, right? Which is you have 5 people blindfolded or 5 blind people, whatever way. And you have them, you walk up and have them touch an elephant and tell them what you're feeling. And you're going to have 5 different animals, right? They touch a tail and they're going to think it's, you know, a snake. They touch the trunk and it's something else, the thigh and something else, the ear and something else. I forget it, right? But it's one of those really important things when on leadership side, right? When you're talking about how do you eat an elephant? Well, how do you get people to understand even that it's an elephant in general when they're approaching it always from their own individual perspectives, right? And it's like, so, I mean, for real, like within an organization is like, marketing is always going to prioritize marketing. And they're going to say, oh, well, I need more money for marketing because it goes this way, you know, and HR and ops and so far down, right? And your customers are always going to come with their own perspective. I need it from this, I need it from this. Yeah. Like like within a larger organization that you guys operate, right? Yeah. How do you like manage those difficult conversations, eating the elephant every day at a time, but like getting people to understand what they're eating?
Right. Yeah. It's funny. Like I think we can bring this whole conversation full circle, right? Yeah. Which is lowest common denominator language. And that is something I think, like, if I'm kind of in retrospect of this conversation, not only our first conversation that we had over lunch, but now this one, right, is we're drawing on these references and putting them within the context of a different problem. But we're using these references, whether it's the elephant, right, whether it's one of the other many cliches that we've brought up or whatnot, those things work and they resonate because it's lowest common denominator language, right? And you and I spoke about this over lunch, and it's like I can't remember what the specific example was. We said something and it kicked off two different conversations, right? Because you were looking at it through your perspective and look, this is how it applies here. I was looking at it through mine. This is how it applies here. But how beautiful was the moment of that, because it was like, it was just one little cliche. And I think it was around leadership, right? Like leaders make sure that the right things happen. Managers make sure things happen right.
Yeah.
And just from that, we went off on two different things and had, and it really kind of got intricate, and we started really riffing on it. So in a you know, in the theme, keeping the theme of keeping it simple, it is looking for that lowest common denominator language, no matter what the situation is. And that's through life experience, and just knowing that, hey, as humans, there's these things that connect us. So how can I make this really easy and simple to digest for everyone? Because look, if you want to get into the technical piece, there's only so far I can go with that, with microservices, man. Like, there's only so far I can dig in with microservices. Once we start talking about APIs and webhooks and get like really down on that level, like, I'm going to have to tap out, because I just can't. I can't go there. I understand how it all works together and kind of the different mechanisms and how to use those to make business decisions. But if we want to talk about implementation and whatnot, I'm not your
guy. Dude, I love that, man. And I love hearing that, because I think that, it's so refreshing to hear, man, especially from somebody that's in a leadership position that has a responsibility for people and an organization, and the fiduciary responsibility to shareholders, right? And because I feel like, I ran a business before this, and it was wild. I had no idea what I was doing. And I was in creative world, which is like herding cats, the most wonderful cats in the world. I'm not a cat person myself, but like, I love creatives. I think that they're magical, important, intuitive humans. And I love seeing them battle with linear thinkers, because it's magic happens when you actually are on the same page. But like chaos can also happen, and it's funny. But the simplicity side is like, listen, man, like, even what we're doing, there's this grand bet that we have with every day that we're building here, right? And, like we talked about, like webhooks and APIs and, microservices and all the architectural base. Like, at the end of the day, the solution that we're presenting, that we're trying to put forward, is one that simplifies things, right? And what's funny is, like, we're going through our target, like our ICP right now, because frankly, I would say every single person that we've talked to sees the benefit. 80% of people are like, ooh, this is going to be really cool. Right. And like, oh, I can see this. Now we need to expand it. But then to that, that's great, right? We provide a simple solution for a lot of people, but that's not how you can go to market. Like, we have to find a very specific niche to latch onto to help us grow. Right. And, my conversation with Sean, who's, co-founder and head of product, is like, he's like, dude, like, we can, like, there's literally a value that we can present to so many people. And we've been going through, we go through it constantly. Like, how do we keep refining and stay focused on people that see the value of this broad swath of tools that need it, but the simplicity? Because when you go through the sales cycle of it, of like, if I were to sell a project management tool to a project manager, or a creative tool to a creative, they're so specific and so niche. They want something very deep dive. They're looking for those features to latch onto just to sell themselves. Do they use it every day? Probably not, but they're gonna think of it through that lens, versus taking something that's like, no, 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 no. This is gonna eliminate one of the biggest problems that you experience in your day-to-day life, but it's not a feature. It's a core architectural change, right? That's behavioral change. That's habitual change. That's, that's a 3 comma opportunity, because
Yeah.
it's a fundamental shift, but it's also, it manifests in a very simple way, in a very common denominator way. And so for us, right, it's like how it's so funny with the common denominator and communicating it, and why I love the how to eat an elephant one bite at a time, is we're doing this with our product, where it's like, listen, we unite these core applications and really core behaviors of everybody at work onto a single place, and allow this retention of context,
Mhm.
right? And it's like, now to a user, that's powerful. To a organization, that's powerful. We're not ready for enterprise. We have to start small, right? We have to do these things and grow it. But how do you, like, this isn't an open-ended question. It's just something that we're dealing with, which is, how do you focus on a very specific subset when you're solving a much broader problem, right? And it's our filter right now, just so you know, to like
Yeah.
preclude this is, it's just a question more than it's a defined position, which is, who manages a ton of shit that doesn't want to manage a ton of shit, right? Like, who craves simplicity, right, in their everyday life? Like, who has to use these tools but doesn't want to use these tools in a way?
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? And it's like, so it's like almost the anti-hero, the anti-consumer idea of like, who kind of hates that they have to do this? Let's solve their problem.
Yeah. No, as you were talking, Jake, it brought me back to what a brand that you just brought up, right, with the iPods, or the AirPods, sorry, Apple. Apple sells the experience, right? They sell the user experience. I know that I've got my MacBook and my notes feature. Whether I open up my AirBook, my iPhone, or I go home and I hop on an iPad or wherever it is, I open up my notes and all my notes are going to be there regardless of the device that I put it on. And that's the experience. Or I open up my music, and no matter where I am, no matter how I'm interfacing it, if I'm opening up Apple Music, all my music's recently added, all that stuff is going to be there. And I think that's essentially the experience that you're trying to provide, but for a business leader, which again, like we're in this constant battle to overcomplicate things, and you have technical individuals bringing things to you, right? And they're like, hey, we need to do this or this or this. Or I mean, like an engineer, I've never met an engineer that likes another engineer's code, right? It's like, this is shit. We need to start over. We need to rewrite it, refactor.
I literally am right now designing hats that say refactor to send to my engineering team. No, they're like creatives. Creatives are the exact same way. Yeah. Right? If you give a creative or an engineers in a way, especially software engineers, are creatives, right? They're just like, they're a very specific kind, which is every engineer would re-architect everything. They would rebuild everything from scratch if they could. You're so right. Right. And you're right. I love, because you introduce another paradox, and I know we gotta get going here in a second, but the paradox is, right, is that how Apple really is a great example. I use the big brands that I'm using as kind of like North Stars right now are obviously are Apple, right? Because they made the PC, the nerdy thing, kind of cool, and they sold the experience, and they also closed off the ecosystem. And they went against the grain of, I need everything for everywhere, all at once. From a different perspective, just from a perception perspective, Tesla did a great job with the electric car, because they took this like granola green thing, and they made it sexy. And they're like, no, this thing goes really fast and it's efficient, and they made it look good. And it's like, wow, that was just smart in that respect. And then actually, what's called Liquid Death is the other one that we love, because
it's a brilliant branding, man.
Brilliant branding, right? Yeah,
Yeah.
and it's more recyclable, because plastics are terrible and aluminum cans are much more recyclable. And it's like, and it's great. Like, hey, people, like, I'm dumbing this down, but like, people with tattoos still drink water. They're not all just drinking, whiskey all day, like whatever it is. But to us, we're trying to channel the same thing, which is like, listen, a whole lot of us like manage these things. We manage businesses. There's construction, independent contractors, right? Like operators in taboo industries that still need to do this, and they don't want the most complex tool, and they don't want the 2006 San Francisco brand of like tech world, right? Like, that's old and it's over, and we don't care, right? And we don't, right? Like, and I hate that they sell it. The same color palettes, the same messaging down to the word, and they promise everything to everybody, and it's all about it's all about the metrics and the KPIs that they're selling to people that don't care, right? And they're selling that B2B thing, whereas like in reality, what a great operator wants is simplicity and clarity, and that doesn't come from overcomplicating the system. It actually comes from taking things away.
Exactly.
But how do you sell that, right? Like, how do you sell, like, you're gonna love this because of the output, right? Because it's going to just make it super fast and super simple. And that's ultimately where we're going. Now, getting there, it's like, oh, so you can do this, but what about this deep dive into this feature? It's like, that's not us.
Yep.
So anyways, man, Alfred, you're the man.
I appreciate that.
Dude, we're going to do this again. I'm going to ping Ian and tell him that you showed on me, and no, but I will be. I'll be in town. I'll let you guys know. No rush. I'm just popping up real quick for a meeting. But hey, man, you're the man. Good luck. We'll talk soon.
For sure.
I appreciate it.
This was awesome. Have a good one, Jake.
All right, Alfred. Bye.
Cheers.